The wheelchair remained still beside the rain-streaked window, but the fury coiling through Kwon Gyung's body crackled like a live wire. She'd left him. The fourth woman in 3 months to walk away from the broken man in expensive clothes. He wasn't angry she'd gone. He was furious she'd wasted his time that was running out. The other patrons of Moonlight Cafe tried not to stare, but Gyung felt their eyes like needles against his skin. The great Kwon Gyung, feared leader of the most ruthless Korean syndicate in the city, abandoned like yesterday's trash. His jaw tightened as he reached for his phone, not to call her back. Never that. But to message his driver. He was done with this charade. The door chimed. Gyung didn't look up immediately. He'd mastered the art of controlled indifference, letting the world orbit around him while he calculated 3 moves ahead. But something made him pause. A shift in the air. The sudden silence that fell when someone walked in who didn't belong in places like this. She stood in the doorway, rain droplets catching the warm cafe lights on her deep brown skin. Natural coils framed her face, damp and wild from the storm outside. She wore a coat that had seen better winters, and her shoes, functional, worn, wrong for this part of town, squeaked slightly against the polished floor as she moved toward the counter. Megan Miles. He knew her name before she spoke. Had known it for 3 days, since his intelligence network flagged her unusual search patterns on the dark web. She'd been looking for him, carefully, professionally, but not carefully enough. The moment she'd started asking about syndicate operations in the financial district, she'd become visible. Now she was here. And she had no idea she'd just walked into a cage. Megan felt his eyes on her before she saw him. That prickling awareness that came from years of training, from surviving situations that should have killed her. She kept her expression neutral, exhausted even, as she approached the counter. She'd rehearsed this, the tired woman seeking warmth and cheap coffee, nothing more. But when she finally let her gaze sweep the room, it snagged on him. The man in the wheelchair by the window. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that didn't just see. They dissected. Black hair styled with precision despite the late hour. A suit that cost more than 6 months of her fake identity's rent. He sat perfectly still, but there was something coiled about him, something predatory in his absolute control. Their eyes met. The air thinned. "Miss." The barista's voice cut through the moment. "What can I get you?" Megan forced herself to look away, to smile, to play the part. "Just a black coffee. Small. That's all we have. That's all I can afford tonight." The words came out sharper than intended, edged with the real exhaustion she'd been carrying for weeks. The barista's expression softened with pity, and Megan wanted to scream. "Miss Miles." The voice came from behind her. Low, controlled. Each syllable wrapped in a Korean accent that made her name sound like a verdict. She turned slowly, every instinct screaming danger. The man in the wheelchair had moved closer, silent as death. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome. Handsome was too soft a word. He was carved from something harder, darker, power barely leashed. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Megan's training kicked in. "I think you have me confused with. I know exactly who you are." Gyung's voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. The barista had moved away, suddenly busy with imaginary tasks. "I know why you're here. I know what you're looking for. And I know you've been searching for 3 months. Her blood turned to ice. "Here's what's going to happen." He gestured to the empty chair across from him with one hand, the movement elegant despite the wheelchair. "You're going to sit. You're going to act surprised when I offer you a job. And if you play this correctly, you might actually survive the night." Megan's mouth went dry. Every exit route she'd memorized became useless. He'd known. The entire time, he'd known. "And if I don't?" She forced the words out. Something that wasn't quite a smile touched his lips. "Then you'll be gone before your coffee gets cold. And trust me, Miss Miles, you won't enjoy how that happens." She sat. The chair was still warm. Someone had been here recently, his abandoned date. The realization that he'd orchestrated even that detail made her stomach clench. "You've been looking for information about your mother's disappearance." Gyung spoke quietly, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "The attack on my convoy 8 years ago. The files that were sealed. The witnesses who vanished." Megan's hands trembled in her lap. She pressed them flat against her thighs, refusing to show more weakness. How? I own this city's shadows, Miss Miles. When someone starts digging into my past, I notice. He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Your search patterns were excellent. Professional. Almost invisible. Almost, what do you want? I want to hire you. The absurdity of it struck her like a physical blow. You want to hire me? The woman who's been investigating you. Not investigating, infiltrating. He corrected her with clinical precision. You've been building a cover identity for 3 months, establishing patterns, creating a paper trail that would get you close to me. Admirable work, really. But I'm offering you something better than infiltration. What? Legitimacy. Kyung leaned forward slightly, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Gun oil, maybe, or the metallic tang of violence barely contained. Work for me, my personal assistant. You'll have access to files you could never reach by sneaking. You'll learn everything you want to know about that night 8 years ago. In exchange for what? Your loyalty. The word hung between them like a blade. There's a traitor in my organization. Someone close. I need someone I can trust. Someone with skills beyond filing paperwork. Someone who knows how to survive. You don't trust me. No, his honesty was brutal. But I trust your motivation. You want answers about your mother. I want to find a snake in my house. Our interests align. Megan stared at him, her mind racing through scenarios, outcomes, traps within traps. And if I refuse, then I'll have wasted more time I don't have. Kyung's expression hardened. And you'll spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'll decide you know too much. The threat wasn't empty. She could see it in the way his hand rested casually near his hip, where a weapon would be. In the way the cafe had subtly emptied around them. She hadn't noticed when the other patrons left, but they were alone now except for the barista who'd disappeared into the back. Why me? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. You could hire anyone. For the first time, something flickered in his dark eyes. Not warmth. Kwon Kyung didn't do warmth, but something like recognition. Because you survived. He said it simply, as though it explained everything. 8 years ago, when my men destroyed that safe house, there were no survivors. The files said everyone died. But here you are. The room tilted. You ordered the attack that killed them. Yes. No apology. No justification. Just brutal, honest fact. And now you want me to work for you. Her laugh came out sharp, bitter. I want you to survive. He corrected her. Again, because if you're smart, Miss Miles, you'll realize that the answers you need are behind me, not through me. And the only way you'll get them is to do exactly what I'm offering. Megan looked at him. Really looked. Past the expensive suit and the wheelchair, and the barely leashed violence. She saw calculation. Desperation, maybe. Though he hid it well. And beneath it all, that same exhaustion she carried. The weight of time running out. The salary is $90,000 a year. Kyung slid a business card across the table. His fingers were long, elegant, scarred along the knuckles. Health insurance, security, and most importantly, answers. She picked up the card. Heavy cardstock, simple black lettering. An address in the financial district where buildings cost more than lives. Come to this address tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. He began to roll backward, dismissing her with the movement. Bring nothing. Wear something professional. And Miss Miles? She looked up. Don't make me regret this, Mercy. I don't offer it twice. Then he was gone, the wheelchair gliding toward a back exit she hadn't seen. 2 men in dark suits materialized from nowhere, flanking him, and she realized with a chill that she'd never been alone with him at all. The barista returned, setting a small coffee in front of her. It's on the house, she said softly, avoiding Megan's eyes. Megan wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. The business card sat in front of her, black letters stark against white. Kwon Kyung, Acquisitions and Holdings, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She'd spent 3 months hunting him. Now he was offering to let her walk straight into his world. Every instinct screamed trap. But those same instincts had kept her alive for 8 years, and they were telling her something else too. This was her only chance. Megan drank the coffee in 3 scalding gulps, pocketed the card, and walked back into the rain. The following morning, as Megan stood outside the glass tower in the financial district, rain hammering against her borrowed umbrella, she couldn't stop thinking about the last time she'd seen her mother. 8 years ago, the night everything ended, the night Kwon Gyung's men had come, and the night she'd learned what it meant to survive when everyone else didn't. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no warning, just marble floors that gleamed like black ice and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city 50 stories below. Megan stepped out, her borrowed heels clicking too loud in the silence, and felt the space swallow her whole. Luxury didn't begin to describe it. This was power made tangible. Clean lines and cold surfaces, leather furniture positioned with mathematical precision, art on the walls that she recognized from her research, stolen pieces, most of them, liberated from collections that no longer existed because their owners had made the mistake of crossing Kwon Gyung. The air smelled expensive. Rich leather and something cleaner, sharper, like the air in a hospital, sterile and controlled. Beneath it, barely perceptible, was the metallic tang of gun oil. She'd smelled it enough times to recognize it instantly, to know that somewhere within arm's reach of wherever Gyung sat, death waited in a holster. "Miss Miles." His voice came from the shadows near the windows. "You're early." She turned. He sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of dark wood, his wheelchair positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. It made him look softer somehow, more human, until you met his eyes and realized softness was a lie he wore like armor. "I don't like to waste time," Megan said, keeping her voice level. "Good. Neither do I." He gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. The leather was cold through her slacks, and she resisted the urge to shift, to show discomfort. The desk between them felt both like protection and like a trap, keeping her at a distance while ensuring she couldn't run. "Before we begin, there's someone you should meet." Gyung pressed a button on his desk. "June, please come in." The door behind her opened so silently she only knew because the air changed. Footsteps approached, measured and confident, and then a man appeared in her peripheral vision. June was beautiful, in the way expensive things are beautiful. Polished, perfect, and utterly cold. Tall and lean in a suit that fit like a second skin, his face angular and sharp, his smile warm in a way that made her skin crawl because it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Miles." He extended his hand. "Welcome. I'm June Park, Mr. Kwon's second in command." His hand was dry, his grip calculated. Firm enough to show strength, gentle enough to suggest courtesy. Megan returned it with equal pressure, watching his eyes the whole time. They were dark, assessing, cataloging her in a heartbeat and filing her away as irrelevant. "Mr. Park handles operations," Gyung said, his tone neutral. "You'll report to me, but many of your tasks will require his coordination. Treat him as you would treat me." The message was clear. June was untouchable, protected, and likely dangerous. "Understood," Megan said. June's smile widened a fraction. "I'm sure we'll work wonderfully together." He turned to Gyung. "The morning briefing is ready when you are. Give us a moment." The dismissal was absolute. June's smile never faltered, but something flickered in his eyes, annoyance maybe, or calculation. He bowed his head slightly and left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Megan waited. She'd learned long ago that silence was a weapon, and the person who spoke first usually lost. Gyung studied her for a long moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "You don't like him." It wasn't a question. "I don't know him," she replied carefully. "But you don't like him." Gyung's lips curved slightly. "Good instincts. June is efficient, loyal, and utterly ruthless. He's also the reason you're here." You think he's the traitor? I know he is. Gyung's voice was flat, certain. What I don't know is who he's working for, or how deep his network runs. That's what you're going to find out. Megan's pulse quickened. You want me to investigate your second in command? I want you to observe, document, and when the moment comes, prove it beyond any doubt. He leaned forward slightly. Your workspace is the outer office. You'll have access to standard files, communications logs, scheduling systems, enough to look busy, enough to be useful. And the real work happens after hours, when the building is quiet and June thinks he's safe. Gyung's eyes held hers. You'll need to be very, very careful, Miss Miles. June suspects everyone. It's what makes him valuable. It's also what makes him dangerous. She nodded slowly, her mind already mapping the space, calculating sightlines and security measures. What am I looking for specifically? Financial discrepancies, communication patterns, meetings that don't appear on official schedules. He paused. Evidence of contact with the Tak family. The name landed like a stone in still water. The Tak family. The rival syndicate that had been slowly encroaching on Gyung's territory for the past year. If June was feeding them information, that would be a death sentence, Megan said quietly. Yes. Gyung's voice was cold. It would. The weight of what he was asking settled over her. She wasn't just infiltrating his organization. She was being weaponized against his most trusted lieutenant. One wrong move and she'd be caught between two killers with nowhere to run. And my mother's file? The question came out harder than she intended. When you give me proof of June's betrayal, I'll give you everything I have. His expression didn't change. That's the deal, Miss Miles. Your answer's for his head. She wanted to argue, to demand the file now, to tell him she didn't make deals with men who ordered massacres. But the truth was simpler and more brutal. She had no choice. The file was here, somewhere in this fortress of marble and shadows, and the only way to get it was to play his game. Where do I start? She asked. Gyung smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Your workstation. Get familiar with the systems. At 6 p.m., everyone leaves except security and myself. That's when you begin. He pressed another button on his desk. The elevator chimed. Your badge and access codes are at the front desk. Don't lose them. And Miss Miles? He waited until she stood, until she was almost at the elevator. June is watching you already. He's been watching since you stepped off the elevator. Remember that. Megan's blood turned cold. She glanced around the vast space, seeing nothing but feeling it now. The weight of hidden cameras, of eyes she couldn't see. Understood, she said. The elevator doors closed, and she was alone with her reflection in the polished steel. Her face looked calm, composed, professional. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged thing desperate to escape. She'd walked into the cage willingly. Now she just had to survive it long enough to get what she came for. The outer office was smaller but no less intimidating. A glass desk positioned to face Gyung's closed door, 2 monitors already powered on, a phone system that looked more complicated than anything she'd used in her cover jobs. The chair was leather, expensive, and positioned so that anyone entering would see her first. A gatekeeper, a shield, a target. Megan sat, logged in with the credentials she'd been given, and began to learn the rhythms of Kwangyong's empire. By noon, she'd memorized the organizational structure. By 2, she'd identified 3 irregularities in June's expense reports. Small enough to be mistakes, large enough to be intentional. By 4, she'd found a communication log that showed June receiving calls from an unlisted number at exactly 2 a.m. every Wednesday for the past 3 months. At 5:55 p.m., the office began to empty. Assistants, analysts, enforcers. They filed out in a silent parade, none of them meeting her eyes. By 6:02, she was alone except for the 2 guards stationed at the elevator and Gyung, still in his office, visible through the glass walls like a king surveying his kingdom. At 6:15, his door opened. Come, he said simply. Megan stood, crossed the space between them, and stepped into his domain. The smell of gun oil was stronger here. She saw it now. A compact pistol resting on the shelf behind his desk, close enough for him to reach even seated. The message was clear. Vulnerability was strategic, but helplessness was a lie. What did you find? Kyung asked. She told him. Watched his expression remain perfectly neutral as she detailed the discrepancies, the calls, the small inconsistencies that wove together into a pattern of deception. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You work quickly, he said finally. You hired me for results. I did. He rolled his chair back slightly, creating space between them. But understanding the problem isn't the same as solving it. I need proof that will hold up when I bring this to the family council. Recordings. Documents. Something June can't explain away. That will take time, Megan said. We don't have much. His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. June is accelerating his plans. I can feel it. Whatever he's building toward, it's coming soon. Then I'll work faster. Kyung studied her, his dark eyes unreadable. Why did you really come here, Miss Miles? And don't tell me it's just about your mother. I've read people my entire life. You carry something heavier than grief. The question cut deeper than she expected. Megan's jaw tightened. You said you'd give me the file when I proved June's betrayal. That's the only reason that matters. She didn't add the rest. That the file was the only surviving thread left from a woman who'd vanished without explanation, leaving behind no remains and no official record of death, only silence that felt engineered. Liar. The word was soft, almost gentle, and somehow that made it worse. You want revenge, Kyung continued. Someone you loved died in that safe house 8 years ago. Your mother survived, but someone else didn't. That's what drives you. That's why you'll risk everything. Megan's hands clenched into fists. You don't know anything about me. I know you're willing to work for the man who ordered the attack. I know you're willing to lie, to infiltrate, to become whatever you need to be to get answers. He leaned forward. That's not just love, Miss Miles. That's guilt. You survived and someone else didn't, and now you're trying to make that mean something. Stop. Her voice cracked. Why? Because I'm right? His expression was implacable. I understand guilt better than most. It's why I'm still alive when I should have died in the explosion that took my legs. It's why I built this empire from a wheelchair. Guilt is the most powerful motivator there is. Stronger than love, stronger than fear. So yes, Miss Miles, I know exactly why you're here. The air between them was electric, charged with truths neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Megan felt stripped bare under his gaze, every carefully constructed lie peeled away until only the raw truth remained. My sister, she whispered. She died in that safe house. She was 16. Kyung's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm sorry. No, you're not. Megan's laugh was bitter. You ordered the attack. You don't get to be sorry. You're right. I don't. He held her gaze. But I can give you what you came for. The file. The truth about what happened that night. The names of everyone involved. He paused. In exchange, you give me June. We both get our justice. It was a devil's bargain, trading one death for another. Megan knew she should walk away, should refuse to let him use her sister's memory as leverage. But she also knew she wouldn't. Deal, she said. Kyung nodded once. Then let's begin. 3 days bled into one another like wounds that wouldn't close. Megan learned the patterns of the penthouse. When the guards changed shift, which cameras had blind spots, how June moved through the space like he owned it because in every way except officially, he did. She documented everything. Photographed files with a camera hidden in her watch. Recorded conversations with equipment so sophisticated it picked up whispers through reinforced glass. Followed money trails that twisted through shell companies and offshore accounts until her eyes burned and her hands shook from too much coffee and not enough sleep. And through it all, Kwon Kyung watched. Not obviously. He was too controlled for that. But she felt his attention like a physical weight, felt him measuring her against some internal standard she couldn't see. He rarely spoke to her directly during office hours, maintaining the professional distance between boss and assistant, but after 6 p.m. when the building emptied, he'd call her into his office and they'd sit in the dim light reviewing her findings like scholars studying ancient texts. It was during those hours that Megan began to understand him. Not like him. She could never like a man who'd ordered her sister's death. But understand. He thought in layers, in contingencies upon contingencies. Every word he spoke was calculated. Every gesture meant something. He was a man who'd learned that vulnerability was death. So he'd armored himself in control so absolute it had become a cage. She understood that kind of prison. She'd built one herself. On the fourth night, Gyung leaned back in his chair and studied the documents she'd spread across his desk. Financial records showing June's accounts receiving payments from a company that didn't exist. Communication logs proving he'd met with Tak family representatives 3 times in the past month. Security footage she'd spliced together showing him accessing files he had no authorization to view. "It's good work," Gyung said finally, "but it's not enough." Megan's frustration flared hot. "It proves he's been in contact with your enemies. It proves he's stealing information. What more do you need?" Context. He tapped one of the documents. These payments could be explained as legitimate business expenses if he has the right documentation. The meetings could be dismissed as intelligence gathering. The file access could be attributed to his position. "I need something that can't be rationalized away." "Like what?" "Like proof he's planning to move against me." Gyung's voice was flat. "Evidence of an assassination attempt. A recorded conversation where he explicitly commits treason. Something that would force the council's hand. That could take weeks." "Then we work for weeks." He met her eyes. "Unless you're tired of looking for your answers." The challenge was clear. Megan wanted to rage at him, at the impossible standards he'd set, at the way he dangled her mother's file like a carrot she'd never reach. But she'd learned something in these 4 days. Kwon Gyung didn't make empty threats. If he said she needed more proof, she needed more proof. "I'll keep looking," she said. "I know you will." He reached for a folder on his desk, his movements precise despite the wheelchair. "These are security protocols for the lower levels. Areas even June doesn't have access to. If he's planning something, he'll need to breach one of these zones. Memorize them." He held the folder out. Megan reached for it. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief. A split second of skin against skin, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. She froze, folder half grasped, and saw Gyung's eyes sharpen with sudden focus. He'd felt it too. His grip on the folder tightened fractionally, keeping her hand in place. His thumb shifted, pressing against the inside of her wrist, and his expression changed, went cold and distant and somehow more intense. "What's this?" His voice was soft, dangerous. Megan's pulse hammered. "What?" "This scar." He traced it with his thumb. A precise, raised line of tissue that ran from her wrist to her palm. "I've seen this pattern before." "It's nothing." She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron despite the wheelchair, despite the supposed weakness. "It's not nothing." Gyung's eyes bore into hers. "This is a pressure cut. The kind you get when someone ties your hands behind your back with steel wire and you struggle hard enough to tear skin. I've seen these exact marks on corpses." The room tilted. Megan's breath came short and sharp. "Let go." "When?" he demanded. "When did this happen?" "Let go," she repeated, putting steel in her voice. He released her. The absence of his touch was somehow worse than the contact, leaving her wrist burning where his thumb had pressed. Megan stepped back, cradling her arm against her chest. "It happened 8 years ago. The night of the safe house attack. They tied us up before they burned the building. I got free. My sister didn't." The silence that followed was absolute. Gyung stared at her, his expression unreadable, but she saw his hands tighten on the armrests of his wheelchair until his knuckles went white. "You were there," he said finally. "In the safe house. When my men came." "Yes." "You survived the fire." "Obviously." "How old were you?" 18. The word tasted like ashes. "My sister was 16. My mother was 39. We were collateral damage in your war." Gyung was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, but no less controlled. "The order was to eliminate the Tak family's intelligence cell. We had confirmation they were using that location to coordinate attacks against my people. Civilian casualties were supposed to be minimal." "Minimal," Megan repeated. "My sister burning to death while I listened to her scream was minimal." "No." He met her eyes. "It was unacceptable. And if I could change it, I would. But you can't." "No, I can't." He rolled his chair back slightly, creating distance. "The scar. You got free, but the wire had already cut deep. You would have bled out without treatment. Someone helped me. Megan's voice was mechanical, reciting facts to avoid feeling them. Pulled me from the rubble, got me to a clinic that didn't ask questions. I never saw their face. But you remember the hands. She froze. What? The hands of the person who saved you. Gyung's expression was impossible to read. You remember them, don't you? She did. God help her, she did. Strong hands with scars along the knuckles. Hands that had moved with precision despite the chaos. Cutting the wire, stanching the bleeding, carrying her weight like she weighed nothing. Why does it matter? She asked. Because I was there that night. Gyung's voice was quiet. After the fire, I surveyed the damage personally to ensure the mission was complete, and I found a girl trapped in the rubble with her hands cut to ribbons, still trying to dig through concrete to reach her sister's body. The world stopped. That was you, Megan whispered. That was me. He held her gaze. I pulled you out, took you to a clinic I trusted, paid for your treatment, and then I left because staying would have put you in more danger than you were already in. You're lying. But even as she said it, she knew it was true. Knew it in the way his hands had felt familiar when he touched her wrist. Knew it in the way he'd understood exactly where the scar came from. I don't lie about things like this. Gyung's expression was grave. You survived because I chose to save you instead of finishing the job. Your mother survived because I moved her to a secure location before the Tak family could retaliate. And your sister died because my men were too thorough and I was too late to stop them. Megan's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the chair across from his desk, her mind reeling. 8 years she'd spent hating him. 8 years of planning this infiltration, of imagining his death 1,000 different ways. And all along he'd been the one who'd saved her life. Why? The word came out broken. Because you reminded me of someone I'd lost. His voice was quiet. And because even monsters have lines they won't cross. Leaving an 18-year-old girl to die in the rubble was mine. But you let my sister die. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. I did, and I've lived with that for 8 years, the same as you. The weight of it crushed her. All the rage, all the grief, all the years of planning revenge. They didn't disappear, but they shifted, became complicated, became something she didn't know how to carry anymore. The file about my mother, she said finally. You've had it all along. Yes. And you knew I'd come looking for you eventually. I suspected. He leaned forward. But I also knew that when you did, I could offer you something more valuable than revenge. What? Purpose. He gestured to the documents spread across his desk. Help me end this. Help me destroy June before he destroys everything I've built. And when it's over, you'll have your answers. All of them. Including the name of the man who gave the order to burn that safe house while families were still inside. You gave the order. I gave the order to eliminate a military target. Someone else decided civilians were acceptable losses. His eyes were hard. That someone is still alive, still in my organization, and he's working with June. The revelation hit like a physical blow. You think June was involved in my sister's death? I know he was. Gyung's voice was ice. He was the one who confirmed the intelligence about the safe house. He was the one who assured me it was a legitimate military target. And he was the one who recommended using incendiary charges instead of precision strikes. Why? Megan's hands shook. Why would he do that? Because even then he was working for the Tak family, setting me up to commit an atrocity that would weaken my position. He paused. Your sister's death, your mother's suffering, your scar. June orchestrated all of it. I was just the weapon he aimed. The rage that flooded through Megan was pure and clean and focused. Not at Gyung, not anymore. But at the man in the outer office. The man who smiled and bowed and pretended loyalty while engineering massacres. Tell me what you need, she said. I need proof he's planning to kill me. Soon. Before the family council meets next month. Gyung's expression was grave. And I need you to trust me. Completely. Because what comes next is going to require you to put your life in my hands. Megan looked at him. Really looked. Past the wheelchair and the expensive suit and the cold control. She saw exhaustion. She saw rage that matched her own. And beneath it all, she saw something like regret. Not enough to absolve him, Not enough to erase what he'd done, but enough to make him human. "I trust you," she said. It was the first honest thing she'd said since walking into his world. And from the way his expression shifted, something softening in his eyes for just a moment, she knew he recognized the weight of it. "Then let's make him pay," Kyung said quietly. Megan nodded, and felt the war inside her shift from revenge to something sharper, cleaner, justice. Not for herself, not even for Gyeong, but for the 16-year-old girl who'd burned alive because a traitor had decided she was expendable. For her sister. For all of them. The evidence came together like pieces of broken glass. Sharp, jagged, impossible to handle without drawing blood. Megan worked 16-hour days, sleeping in the small apartment Gyeong had provided 2 blocks from the tower, her dreams haunted by flames and her sister's screams. Every morning she woke with her wrist aching where the old scar tissue pulled tight, a phantom reminder of the night everything had burned. But now she knows the truth. And truth was its own kind of weapon. 2 weeks into her service, on the 5th night before the council meeting, Megan spread the final pieces of evidence across his desk. It was 8 p.m. The city below was alive with lights, but the penthouse was silent except for the quiet hum of climate control and the softer sound of their breathing. "This is it," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. "Everything you asked for." Gyeong wheeled closer, his dark eyes scanning the documents with the focused intensity of a predator tracking prey, financial records showing payments from the Tak family to shell corporations June controlled. Encrypted communications she'd decrypted using tools she'd learned from people whose names she'd never speak aloud. Security footage showing June meeting with known Tak enforcers in locations far from any legitimate business. And the final piece. The one that had taken days to acquire and nearly gotten her killed. A recorded conversation between June and a Tak family lieutenant discussing the logistics of eliminating Kwon Gyeong during the family council meeting. "The building has structural weaknesses on the 3rd floor," June's voice said from the small recorder. "A gas line that runs through the council chamber. If the ignition is timed correctly, it will look like an accident. Old building, poor maintenance, tragic loss of leadership. And you're certain Kwon will be in the chamber?" the Tak lieutenant asked. "He never misses council meetings. His pride won't allow it." June's voice was smooth, calm, as casual as if he were discussing dinner plans. "Once he's dead, I'll assume emergency leadership. 3 months to consolidate power. 6 months to transfer key assets to your family. A year to complete the merger. The council won't accept you automatically. They will if I'm the only option standing. I've already arranged for the other candidates to be indisposed during the incident." The recording ended. Silence filled the penthouse like water filling a drowning man's lungs. Gyeong sat perfectly still, his hands resting on the armrests of his wheelchair, his expression carved from stone. Megan watched him, saw the minute tension in his jaw, the way his breathing had gone shallow and controlled. "When?" he asked finally. "The council meeting is in 5 days. And this recording, how did you get it?" "June's car. He has it swept for bugs daily, but I placed a device in the air conditioning system that only activates when it detects his voice pattern." She paused. "He won't know it's there until it's too late." "Did he see you?" "No." "Are you certain?" "Yes." She met his eyes. "I'm good at this, Gyeong. You hired me because I'm good at this." It was the first time she'd used his name without the formal Mr. Kwon. The intimacy of it hung between them, unexpected and heavy. His expression shifted. Something flickering in his dark eyes that might have been approval, or might have been something more dangerous. "You're better than good," he said quietly. "You're exceptional." The compliment shouldn't have warmed her. She was here for justice, for her sister, for the truth about that night 8 years ago. Not for the approval of a man who'd built an empire on violence and fear. But it warmed her anyway. "What do we do now?" she asked, pushing past the dangerous flutter in her chest. "Now we spring our own trap." Gyeong rolled back from the desk, turning to face the windows. The city glittered below, and his reflection in the glass looked like a king surveying his kingdom. "The council meeting happens in 5 days. June will move before then. He'll need to ensure his other rivals are eliminated first. We'll let him think he's succeeding. And then I kill him. No emotion, no heat, just flat certainty. But I need to do it in a way that proves his betrayal to the council. Evidence they can't ignore. confession they can't rationalize away. The recording can be dismissed as manufactured. Audio manipulation is too easy now. He turned back to face her. No, I need something more visceral, more undeniable. Megan's stomach tightened. What are you planning? I need you to help me stand. The words were so unexpected it took her a moment to process them. What? Help me stand, he repeated, his voice low and intense. I need to show you something, and I can't do it from this chair. Her heart hammered. She'd seen him in the wheelchair for weeks now, had watched him maneuver with practiced grace, had assumed the paralysis was as real as everyone believed it to be. But now, looking at him, she remembered what he'd said about strategic vulnerability, about maintaining appearances to lull his enemies into complacency. Gyung, Day is on the lower levels, he said, referring to the head of his security. He won't return for another hour. We're alone, completely alone. He held her gaze. Trust me, please. The please undid her. This man who commanded armies, who inspired terror with a whisper, was asking, not ordering, asking. Megan moved around the desk, stood in front of him. His hands gripped the armrests, and she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his breathing had changed. What do I do? She asked. Give me your hands. She did. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, strong, scarred along the knuckles just like she remembered from that night 8 years ago. The contact sent electricity racing up her arms. When I move, support my weight, he said. Don't pull. Just be my anchor. She nodded, felt his grip tighten, and then he pushed. The movement was agonizing. She saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way sweat beaded on his forehead, the way his breath hissed between his teeth. His legs shook, from disuse or from pain. She couldn't tell, and for a moment she thought he would collapse. But he didn't. Inch by inch, he rose from the wheelchair, straightened, stood. Megan's breath caught. She had always suspected the chair was a strategic lie, but the sheer, visible agony he endured to maintain the illusion proved the real betrayal was to himself. He was taller than she'd imagined. Broader. Without the wheelchair between them, she could see the full line of his body. Lean muscle beneath the expensive suit, power held in check by will alone. You can walk, she whispered. Barely. His voice was strained. The explosion damaged my spine. I can stand for short periods. Walk maybe 10 steps before the pain becomes unbearable. But I can do it. Why hide it? Because weakness invites attack. His hands were still locked with hers, and she realized he was using her to stay upright. The wheelchair makes people underestimate me. Makes them think I'm broken. Makes them careless. Like June. Exactly like June. He took a gasping breath. I've maintained the illusion for 2 years. Let everyone believe I was crippled. Let them think I was weak. And all the while I was watching. Waiting. Building the strength to stand when the moment came. And the moment is now. Yes. His eyes burned into hers. When June comes for me, I need to be standing. Need to show the council that I'm not the broken thing he thinks I am. That I'm still their leader. Still strong enough to protect them. Megan understood. This wasn't just about killing June, it was about theater. About demonstrating dominance so absolute that no one would dare question it. When will you reveal it? She asked. At the council meeting. After June's planted his bomb. After he thinks he's won. Gyung's grip tightened on her hands. I'll let him believe I'm trapped. Let him approach to gloat. And then I'll stand, walk to him, and end him with my bare hands while the council watches. It was brutal. Poetic. The perfect culmination of 2 years of careful planning. You'll need physical therapy, Megan said. Training to build the strength back. 10 steps isn't enough. I know. He met her eyes. That's why I'm telling you now. I need you to help me. Every night. After everyone leaves. I need you to be my anchor while I learn to walk again. The request was intimate, in a way that had nothing to do with romance, and everything to do with trust. He was giving her the ultimate vulnerability. Showing her his weakness, putting his life in her hands. Why me? She asked. Because you're the only person in this building who wants me alive. His smile was grim. Everyone else either wants me dead or wants to use me. You just want the truth. That makes you the safest person here. It was a terrible reason, a cynical reason. and it was completely accurate. "All right," she said. "I'll help you." Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. His grip on her hands relaxed fractionally, and she realized he'd been bracing for rejection. "We start tonight," he said. "After day's patrol. Midnight." "Midnight," she agreed. He nodded once. And then, with agonizing slowness, he lowered himself back into the wheelchair. The moment his weight left her hands, she felt the absence like a cold wind. Her palms tingled where his skin had touched hers. Gyung sagged back, his face pale, sweat dampening his collar. "Leave the documents," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I'll secure them. Go home. Rest. You'll need your strength." Megan wanted to argue, to stay, to make sure he was all right. But she recognized dismissal when she heard it. He'd shown her something profound, and now needed space to recover from the vulnerability. She left without another word. But as the elevator descended, she pressed her palms together and felt the ghost of his touch burning against her skin. At midnight she returned. The penthouse was dark except for a single lamp in Gyung's office. He sat in the wheelchair, changed into simple black clothing. No suit, no armor of expensive fabric. Just a man preparing for a battle that would take weeks instead of seconds. "Ready?" he asked. Megan crossed to him, offered her hands, and together they began. The first night he managed 5 steps before the pain drove him back to the chair. The second night, 7. By the 4th night, he could walk the length of his office. 12 steps, before his legs gave out. Each night, Megan was his anchor. She learned the rhythm of his breathing, the warning signs when pain was about to overwhelm him, the exact pressure needed to support without insulting his pride. And each night, the intimacy of it grew. Not romance. Nothing so simple. But a connection forged in shared purpose and vulnerability that felt more binding than any promise. On the 5th night, after he'd successfully walked 15 steps and collapsed back into his chair with a gasp of triumph, he looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're paying me," she replied, but there was no heat in it. "Not for this." His hand caught hers before she could step away. "For this, you're doing it because you choose to. That's worth more than money." Megan's throat tightened. She didn't want to acknowledge what was happening between them. Didn't want to name the way her heart raced when he touched her, or the way she found herself thinking about him during the hours they were apart. He was the man who'd ordered the attack that killed her sister. Nothing could erase that. Nothing should make her care about him, but she did. God help her, she did. "The council meeting is tomorrow," she said, pulling her hand free. "Are you ready?" "Almost." He rolled the chair to his safe, opened it with quick, precise movements, and pulled out a file. "This is yours. Everything I have about that night. Names, orders, evidence." Megan's heart stopped. "You said you'd give it to me after we dealt with June. I know." He held the file out. "But I also know that promises made under duress aren't really promises. You've earned this, regardless of what happens tomorrow." She took it with trembling hands. The file was thick, heavy with the weight of 8 years of grief. Inside would be answers, truth, maybe even justice. "Why now?" she asked. "Because if something goes wrong tomorrow, I want you to have it." His expression was grave. "And because you trusted me enough to help me walk, I should trust you enough to give you what you came for." Megan clutched the file to her chest, felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. "Don't die tomorrow," she said, and her voice was raw. "I don't intend to." He met her eyes. "But if I do, finish this. Make sure June pays. Make sure the council knows what he did." "Gyang." "Promise me." "I promise." The words came out fierce. "But you're not going to die. You're going to walk into that council chamber, and you're going to destroy him. And then we're going to figure out what the hell happens next." His smile was small, surprised, and achingly genuine. "What happens next?" he repeated softly. I like the sound of that. So did she. More than she should. More than was safe. Megan left with the file clutched against her heart, and the terrifying knowledge that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing Kwon-gyung as a target, and started seeing him as something far more dangerous. As someone worth saving. The council meeting was set for 2 p.m. in the old building on the east side. A relic from the syndicate's founding days, all dark wood and darker history. Megan arrived at noon, 2 hours early, dressed in the crisp black suit Young had provided, and carrying enough concealed weapons to start a small war. She wasn't supposed to be here. Assistants didn't attend council meetings. But Young had been explicit. She was to position herself in the observation gallery above the chamber, hidden from view but close enough to act if everything went wrong. The building smelled like old smoke and older secrets. Megan made her way through the corridors, nodding to the guards who'd been briefed to expect her, and climbed the narrow stairs to the gallery. The space was barely more than a balcony, enclosed by ornate wooden screens that allowed her to see into the chamber below while remaining invisible. She settled into position, checked her weapons, and waited. At 1:45, the council members began to arrive. 11 men and 2 women, all of them old enough to have survived decades in a business where most died young. They took their seats around the massive circular table, their faces carved from stone, their eyes calculating. At 1:55, June entered. He looked perfect. Expensive suit, warm smile, every inch the loyal second in command. He greeted each council member with practiced deference, made small talk about family and business, and gave no indication that beneath the chamber, a bomb was waiting to reduce them all to ash. At 2 exactly, Kwon Gyong arrived. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the door as he wheeled himself in, his face impassive, his movements controlled. He looked exactly as he always did, contained, untouchable, a king in all but name. Megan's heart hammered. She knew what was hidden beneath that carefully maintained facade, knew the pain each movement cost him, knew that tonight, after this was over, they'd return to the penthouse and he'd collapse into her arms, exhausted and triumphant. If he survived? Gentlemen, ladies. Gyung's voice carried through the chamber. Thank you for coming. We have much to discuss. The meeting began. Business matters, territory disputes, profit margins, alliance negotiations, standard syndicate politics. Megan watched June carefully, saw the way his eyes kept flicking to his watch, saw the tension in his shoulders despite his calm expression. He was waiting. The bomb was set to detonate at 2:30. 30 minutes to get through the preliminary business and excuse himself on some pretext, leaving the council to die while he established his alibi. At 2:15, Megan's earpiece crackled. Day's voice barely a whisper. Bomb located. 3rd floor gas line, exactly where the recording said. Disarming now. She touched her own mic twice in acknowledgement. Felt her breathing ease slightly. One threat neutralized. But June wouldn't rely on a single method. Men like him always had contingencies. At 2:20, June stood. My apologies, but I need to take an urgent call. 5 minutes. He left the chamber. Megan tracked his movement through the screens, watched him walk down the corridor, pull out his phone, make a call. His expression was calm, but she'd learned to read the micro-expressions beneath the mask. He was confused. The bomb should have gone off by now. At 2:25, he returned, took his seat, and Megan saw it. The slight bulge beneath his jacket. Not a phone, a weapon. He was going to do it himself. Her hand went to her own gun. Every muscle tensed. In the chamber below, Gyung was speaking. Which brings us to matters of internal security. There have been concerns raised about loyalty, about members of this organization working with our enemies. June's expression didn't change, but Megan saw his hand drift toward his jacket. I have evidence, Gyung continued, his voice even, of systematic betrayal, financial records, communications, recorded conversations. Sir, June's voice was smooth. Perhaps we should discuss this in private. No. Gyung's tone was absolute. The council needs to hear this, needs to understand the depth of the rot. He gestured. Day entered, carrying a tablet. Set it on the table. Pressed play. June's voice filled the chamber, discussing the bombing, the murder of the council, the transfer of power, every word a nail in his coffin. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then chaos. June surged to his feet, gun appearing in his hand with practiced speed. But he didn't aim at Gyung. He aimed at the tablet, at the evidence, trying to destroy it before. Megan moved. She'd calculated the angle earlier, mapped the trajectory. One shot through the decorative screen, carefully placed to disarm without killing. She needed him alive, needed him to confess. The bullet took him in the shoulder. June spun, his gun clattering to the floor, his face contorting with shock and rage. And Kwon Gyung stood. The effect was instantaneous. Every person in the chamber froze, staring at the man who'd just risen from his wheelchair like Lazarus from the tomb. Gyung's face was white with pain, his hands gripping the edge of the table, but he was standing. 2 years, he said quietly. 2 years I let you think I was broken. Let you think I was weak. Let you plan and scheme and betray while I watched and waited. He took a step, then another. Each movement agonizing but deliberate, closing the distance between himself and June. You thought the wheelchair made me vulnerable. You thought I couldn't defend myself. You were wrong. June clutched his wounded shoulder, backing away. The council will never accept. The council will accept what I tell them to accept. Gyung's voice was ice. Because unlike you, I've earned their loyalty. I've bled for this family, built it, protected it. While you sold us piece by piece to our enemies. He was close enough now to touch June, close enough to kill him, but he didn't. Instead, he turned to the council. 8 years ago, I ordered an attack on a Tak family safe house. I was told it was a legitimate military target. I was told civilian casualties would be minimal. Both were lies. 17 people died that night, including women and children, because the intelligence was falsified. Because someone wanted to make me look like a monster. His eyes found June. You gave me that intelligence. You confirmed the target. You recommended incendiary charges. You orchestrated a massacre and let me take the blame. You have no proof. June started. I have a witness. Gyung looked up at the gallery. Miss Miles, please join us. Megan stood, descended the stairs, entered the chamber with her gun still in her hand, and the eyes of the council tracking her every move. She stopped beside Gyung, close enough to catch him if he fell, close enough to feel the tremor in his body from the effort of standing. Tell them, Gyung said quietly. Megan looked at June, saw recognition flash in his eyes. He knew her now, knew why she looked familiar. My name is Megan Miles, she said, her voice steady. 8 years ago, I was in the safe house when Mr. Kwon's men attacked. My sister burned to death. My mother barely survived, and I spent years believing Kwon Gyung was responsible. She paused, let the weight of it fill the room. But he wasn't. He was used. Someone fed him false intelligence. Someone wanted that attack to happen, wanted civilians to die, wanted to create an atrocity that would destabilize the organization. She turned to the council. That someone was June Park, and I have proof. She pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table beside the tablet. Communications between June and the Tak family dating back 10 years. Financial records showing payments for services rendered. And testimony from 3 survivors who witnessed him meeting with Tak lieutenants the week before the attack, providing building layouts and civilian schedules. The silence was absolute. June laughed. It was a broken, desperate sound. You think they'll believe you? A nobody? An outsider? They'll believe the evidence, Gyung said. They'll believe the recordings, and they'll believe me when I tell them you're a traitor who needs to die. He moved fast. Faster than anyone expected from a man who'd just stood for the first time in 2 years. His hand closed around June's throat, lifting him, slamming him back against the wall with force that cracked the wooden paneling. You killed children, Gyung said, his voice deadly quiet. You destroyed families. You made me a monster in the eyes of people I should have protected. And you did it all for money. June clawed at Gyung's hand, gasping, his face turning purple. Gyung. Megan's voice cut through the rage. Don't. He looked at her. His eyes were black with fury, with 2 years of contained violence demanding release. He deserves to die, Gyung said. He does, she agreed. But not like this. Not when the council needs to see justice, not revenge. It was the hardest thing she'd ever said. Every fiber of her being wanted June dead, wanted to watch him suffer the way her sister had suffered. But this wasn't about what she wanted. It was about what was right. Gyung held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he released June. Let him crumple to the floor, choking and gasping. Take him, Kyung said to the guards. He'll stand trial before the full family council. Evidence will be presented. Judgment will be rendered. The guards moved, hauled June to his feet, dragged him from the chamber while he screamed protestations of innocence that no one believed. When he was gone, Kyung turned to the council. I've led you for 15 years, built this organization from the ground up. Today, you've seen me stand when I should have been paralyzed. You've seen proof of betrayal at the highest levels. And you've seen me choose justice over vengeance. He paused. Let the weight of his words sink in. I'm asking you to reaffirm your loyalty, to stand with me as we root out the rest of the corruption, to trust that I will always put this family first. His voice dropped. Or, to challenge me now, while I'm exhausted and you have the advantage. No one moved. Then, one by one, the council members stood, bowed, reaffirmed their loyalty in words and gestures that had been unchanged for generations. When the last had spoken, Kyung nodded once. This meeting is adjourned. He turned, took 3 steps toward the door, and collapsed. Megan caught him, felt his weight settle against her, felt his breathing harsh and ragged against her neck. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. I know, he said. And then, so quietly only she could hear, You've always had me. The council filed out, leaving them alone in the chamber. Megan lowered Kyung into his wheelchair, her hands gentle on his shoulders. You did it, she said. We did it. He looked up at her, exhaustion and triumph warring in his eyes. Together. His hand found hers, pulled her closer. She went willingly, kneeling beside the wheelchair so their faces were level. Thank you, he said. For stopping me, for reminding me what justice looks like. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Her voice was soft, about everything. They stayed like that for a moment, hands clasped, breathing synchronized. The chamber around them was dark and heavy with history. But in their small circle of contact, something bright and fragile was taking shape, something that felt dangerously like hope. Take me home, Kyung said finally. Megan stood, gripped the handles of his wheelchair, and together they left the chamber of judgment behind. But as they passed through the doorway, Kyung reached up and caught her wrist. His thumb pressed against the faded scar there, tracing the raised tissue with infinite gentleness. This, he said quietly, was my greatest failure. But you. His eyes met hers. You are my redemption. Megan's breath caught. She should pull away. Should remind him of all the reasons this was impossible. Should remember that forgiveness wasn't the same as absolution. But she didn't. Instead, she covered his hand with hers, pressing his palm flat against her scarred wrist. We're both made of broken pieces, she said. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it is, he agreed. And in the darkness of the old building, with the ghost of violence still hanging in the air, they made a silent pact. Not of love, not yet, but of understanding. Of 2 people who'd survived impossible things and found in each other a reason to keep surviving. The war wasn't over. June's trial would come. The Tak family would retaliate. There would be more blood, more danger, more impossible choices. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And that was enough. Rain hammered against the penthouse windows like fists demanding entry. Megan stood 3 feet from Kyung's desk, close enough to hear his breathing, far enough to maintain the illusion of professional distance. The illusion was wearing thin. The final plan, Kyung said, his voice low enough that even hidden microphones would struggle to capture it. June will move within 48 hours. The council meeting creates the perfect opportunity. Multiple targets, maximum chaos, plausible deniability. Megan nodded. Her fingers traced the edge of a folder containing false financial records they'd spent the past week manufacturing. Breadcrumbs designed to lead June exactly where they wanted him. And the asset transfer? Completed this morning. Kyung's eyes met hers. On paper, I look desperate, liquidating holdings, moving resources to protected accounts, a man preparing for defeat. Or death. Yes. The word hung between them like smoke. June will smell blood in the water. He'll accelerate his timeline, strike while I appear weak. The city lights below painted his face in alternating shadow and gold. Megan watched the rain streak down the glass and thought about drowning, about how easy it would be to let the current take her under. She'd come here hunting truth about her mother, armed with 3 months of careful planning and 8 years of righteous fury. Now she stood in the devil's penthouse, helping him orchestrate the death of another devil, and the worst part was how right it felt. "You're thinking too loud," Young said. She looked at him. "What am I thinking? That you've crossed lines you swore you never would. That helping me makes you complicit in everything I've done. That your sister would be ashamed." His voice was clinical, dissecting her with surgical precision. "That you're falling for the man who ordered the attack that destroyed your family." Megan's jaw tightened. "You don't know what I'm thinking." "Don't I?" He rolled closer. The wheelchair's movement was whisper, quiet against marble. "I know guilt when I see it, Miss Miles. I've worn it like skin for years. Stop calling me that. What should I call you?" "Megan." Her name came out raw. Just Megan. Something shifted in his expression. Not softening. Kwon-gyung didn't soften, but recognition, maybe. Acknowledgement that the walls between them were crumbling faster than either could control. "Megan," he repeated, and her name in his mouth felt like a claim. "When this is over, when June is dealt with and the council reaffirms my position, you're free to leave. Take the file. Find your mother. Disappear. Is that what you want?" "What I want is irrelevant." His hand rested on the armrest, fingers tapping a pattern she recognized. Anxiety disguised as calculation. "What matters is that you have a choice. Real choice, not coercion dressed as opportunity." Megan moved closer, stood beside his chair where the height difference disappeared and she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the silver threading through his black hair near his temple. Details she'd memorized without meaning to. "What if I don't want to leave?" The question escaped before caution could stop it. Gyung's eyes locked on hers, dark and depthless and burning with something that looked dangerously like hope. "Then you're more damaged than I thought." "We're both damaged." She knelt beside the wheelchair, bringing them eye level. Rain continued its assault on the windows. "You built an empire from a hospital bed. I built a new identity from ashes. We're both monsters pretending to be human. I'm not pretending." His voice dropped lower, intimate as a confession. "I know exactly what I am. What terrifies me is that you're starting to accept it. Maybe acceptance isn't the same as approval." Her hand moved without permission, hovering near his on the armrest, not touching. "Not yet. Maybe it's just recognition. Monster to monster. Megan." Her name was a warning. "I should hate you." The words came fast now, pressure releasing from a damaged valve. "Every time I look at you, I should see my sister burning, should hear her screaming, should feel the wire cutting into my wrists while your men set the world on fire. But you don't." "No." The admission tasted like betrayal. "I see the man who pulled me from the rubble, who paid for my treatment, who's giving me the only thing I've wanted for 8 years. The truth. The truth is ugly, Megan. When you read that file, when you find your mother, you'll discover things that can't be unknown." His hand finally moved, covering hers on the armrest. His palm was warm, scarred along the knuckles, familiar in ways that made her chest ache. "You'll learn that war creates only victims, that your mother made choices too, that nothing is as simple as revenge. I know that." Her voice was steady, despite the electricity racing up her arm from where his skin met hers. "I've known it since the night you told me June orchestrated the intelligence. But knowing doesn't make the grief stop. Doesn't make me stop wanting someone to pay. June will pay." Young's thumb traced the scar on her wrist, that raised line of old violence. "In 48 hours, this ends. Either he dies or I do. Either way, your debt is settled. It's not about debt anymore." Megan turned her hand, letting their palms press together. The gesture was intimate, binding, more dangerous than any weapon she'd ever held. "It stopped being about debt the night you showed me you could stand. The night you trusted me with your biggest weakness. That wasn't trust, that was strategy." But his fingers tightened around hers, contradicting the words. "Liar." She leaned closer, their faces inches apart. Close enough to see his pupils dilate, to feel his breath against her lips. "You trusted me because you're as lonely as I am. Because you're surrounded by people who want your power, And I'm the only one who just wants you alive. Why? The question was barely audible over the rain. Why do you want me alive? Because she saw herself reflected in him. Because his loneliness echoed hers. Because somewhere between the cafe and this penthouse, between hatred and understanding, she'd stopped hunting him and started protecting him. Because I need you, she whispered, and felt the truth of it settle like stone in her chest. Because if you die, I'm alone again, and I can't survive that twice. Kyung's free hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, wiping away tears she hadn't known were falling. You're stronger than you think, he said. You survived fire and grief and 8 years of planning revenge. You could survive my death. I don't want to, her voice cracked. I don't want to survive you, Kyung. I want to live with you, even if it makes me a traitor, even if it damns me. The confession hung between them, irreversible. Outside, lightning split the sky, casting the penthouse in stark white light. In that flash, Megan saw everything. His face etched with exhaustion and desire, his hand trembling against her cheek, his eyes holding something that looked like devotion. If we do this, he said carefully, there's no going back, no pretending this was just a job, no walking away clean. I stopped being clean the moment I sat down in that cafe. Then we're both damned. He leaned forward, closing the space between them until his forehead rested against hers. Not a kiss. Something more intimate. A promise made in silence and skin. 48 hours, Megan. 48 hours to end this war, and then we figure out what we are. Yes. His breath was warm against her mouth. What we are. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, hands clasped, until the rain finally began to slow. When Megan finally pulled back, she saw her own reflection in the dark windows, a woman kneeling beside a wheelchair, holding the hand of the man who'd destroyed her family and saved her life. She looked like salvation. She looked like sin. She looked exactly like what she'd become. 36 hours later, Megan stood in the doorway of Kyung's private quarters, watching him pretend to die. The room was smaller than the main penthouse, more intimate. Dark wood and darker shadows. A bed that looked too soft for a man who'd trained himself to survive in wheelchairs. Medical equipment, arranged with calculated precision. IV stands, monitors, oxygen tanks. All of it real. All of it unnecessary. Kyung lay propped against pillows, his face pale, breathing shallow. The performance was flawless. If Megan hadn't spent the past 2 weeks watching him walk 15 steps every midnight, hadn't felt his strength when he gripped her hands, she'd believe he was dying. He's coming, Day said quietly from his position near the window. The security chief's voice was tight with controlled violence. June just entered the building, alone. Good. Kyung's eyes stayed closed, but his voice was steady. Megan, position. She moved to the chair beside his bed, the nervous assistant clutching her employer's hand as death approached. Her other hand rested in her lap, 2 inches from the compact pistol hidden in her blazer. Close enough. Always close enough. The door opened without warning. June entered like a man who already owned the room. His suit was pristine, his expression concerned in a way that would fool cameras, and his eyes swept the space with predatory efficiency. He saw Day first. Expected, permitted. Then Megan, irrelevant, beneath notice. Finally Kyung, the prize, the target, the obstacle about to be removed. Sir. June's voice carried exactly the right mix of worry and deference. I came as soon as I heard. The staff said you'd collapsed. Internal bleeding. Kyung's voice was weak, threading with pain that wasn't entirely false. Walking 15 steps every night had consequences. The old injury, finally failing. Have you called for doctors? June moved closer, each step calculated. No time, minutes maybe. Kyung's eyes opened, meeting June's with an intensity that belied his supposed condition. Need to. Transfer authority. Before I'm gone. Can't leave the organization vulnerable. Megan watched June's face, saw the flash of triumph he couldn't quite hide. This was it. The moment he'd orchestrated for months. Kyung incapacitated. Authority in flux. Opportunity ripe for seizure. Of course. June pulled out his phone, I'll initiate emergency protocols. Transfer command to the council. No. Kyung's hand moved weakly toward Megan. To you. Emergency succession. You're most qualified. The lie was so perfect it hurt to hear. Megan squeezed Kyung's hand, playing her part. The frightened woman watching her employer slip away. Her thumb found his pulse point. Strong. Steady. Ready. June hesitated. Sir, the council should vote. No time for votes. Kyung's breathing turned ragged. Need you. To promise. Protect the organization. No matter what. I promise. June's voice was silk over steel. I'll protect everything you've built. Swear it. I swear. June moved closer still, until he stood at the foot of the bed. Close enough to watch Kyung die. Close enough to ensure it happened. On everything I hold sacred, I will protect this organization. Good. Kyung's eyes closed. Day. Witness this. Succession. Activated. Day nodded stiffly, his hand near his weapon. Megan felt the tension coiling tighter, waiting for the moment to snap. June pulled out a small tablet. I'll need your access codes. For the transition. In the safe. Behind the painting. Kyung's hand lifted weakly, pointing to the far wall. Combination. Written down. Didn't trust my memory. It was the bait. The final lure. June moved toward the painting, his back to the bed. And Megan saw his guard drop for the first time since entering. He thought he'd won. Thought Kyung was too weak to be a threat. He was wrong. June opened the safe, reached inside, and froze. Empty, he said quietly. Yes. Kyung's voice changed. No longer weak, no longer threaded with pain. Cold and clear and absolutely lethal. Because you were never getting those codes. June spun. His hand went for the weapon hidden at his hip, but Day was faster. The security chief's gun appeared, aimed center mass, stopping June mid-draw. Don't, Day said flatly. Kyung sat up. The monitors connected to nothing continued their fake readings, but he moved with fluid control, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Megan released his hand, giving him space, her own weapon now drawn and trained on June's chest. You're not dying, June said slowly, understanding flooding his features along with something that looked like respect. No, Kyung stood. The movement was still painful. His face tightened with it, but he stood straight and tall and utterly in control. But you should have been more patient. Should have waited until I was actually in the ground. How long have you known? June's voice was calm, accepting. A professional recognizing he'd been outplayed. 2 years. Kyung took a step forward, then another. His gait was measured, each movement deliberate. Since the first suspicious payment appeared in your accounts, since you started asking questions about my medical treatment, since you began positioning yourself for succession, then why let me continue? Because I needed to know how deep the rot went. Who else was compromised? What you'd promised the Tak family. Kyung was close now, invading June's space with the same predatory grace June had used entering the room. You gave me everything, every contact, every communication, every piece of evidence I needed to prove your betrayal. The council won't accept your word against mine. They will when they hear the recordings. Megan spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Every conversation you've had for the past 3 weeks, every meeting with Tak representatives, every plan to eliminate council members and blame it on structural failures. June's eyes finally found her, really looked at her. Recognition flickered. You're the girl from the safe house, the one who survived. 18 years old, watching my sister burn while your men stood guard. Megan's weapon didn't waver. You remember us now? Collateral damage. June's tone was dismissive. Necessary for the larger objective. My sister was 16. The words came out flat, emotionless, but Megan felt the rage building behind them like water behind a dam. She had a name, Adriana. She wanted to be a teacher. She died screaming your orders. And you used that grief to infiltrate my organization. Kyung's voice held something like admiration. Impressive, really. 3 months of careful planning. Sophisticated identity work. You would have succeeded if I hadn't been watching for exactly that approach. So you knew from the beginning. June's lips curved in a bitter smile. Used her the way I used you. No. Gyung's tone was absolute. I gave her a choice. Truth for loyalty. Justice for service. You gave her nothing but ashes and trauma. Semantics. June shrugged. We're all using each other. That's how this world works. You use your people. I use mine. She uses her grief. We're not so different. We're nothing alike. Megan's voice was ice. I don't murder children to advance my position. Then you're weak. June met her eyes. And weakness is death in this business. You'll learn that. Or you'll end up like your sister. Collateral damage in someone else's war. The words were designed to wound, to provoke, to make her pull the trigger so June could die a martyr instead of a traitor. Megan didn't pull the trigger. Instead, she holstered her weapon. Stood. Walked to where Gyung stood and stopped beside him. Not behind him, beside him. Equal footing. Partners in this final confrontation. I already learned that lesson, she said quietly. 8 years ago, when I dug through burning rubble with my hands cut to ribbons, when I survived because someone chose to pull me out instead of finishing the execution, I learned that strength isn't just violence. It's choosing when not to kill. She looked at Gyung, saw understanding in his dark eyes, saw the same lesson reflected back, that power without mercy was just tyranny in expensive suits. You're making a mistake, June said. Letting me live. Probably. Gyung's hand moved, quick as a snake, striking June's temple with calculated force. The traitor dropped, unconscious but breathing. But we're not killing you in a bedroom. You'll stand before the council, confess, face judgment from the people you betrayed. He'll never confess, Day said, already moving to secure June's wrists with zip ties. He will. Gyung's voice was certain. Because he'll realize the alternative is watching everyone he cares about disappear. Even traitors have families. Even monsters have lines they won't cross. Megan watched Day drag June's unconscious body toward the door. Watched the man who'd orchestrated her sister's death being hauled away like garbage. She should feel triumph. Should feel the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Instead, she felt hollow, empty. Like she'd spent 8 years building toward this moment, and now that it had arrived, there was nothing left inside her to feel. Megan. Gyung's voice was soft. His hand found hers, fingers lacing together with familiar ease. It's over. Is it? She looked at their joined hands. June goes to trial, gets executed. My sister is still dead. Your spine is still damaged. The world keeps turning like none of this mattered. It mattered. He pulled her closer, until they stood chest to chest, breathing the same air. Every choice, every risk. Every night you spent helping me walk. It all mattered because you chose to stand beside me instead of shooting me in the back. I should have shot you. But there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion and relief. And something dangerously close to peace. Probably. His smile was small, genuine, and heartbreaking in its rarity. But you didn't. And that's why we're going to survive this. Together. Together, the word felt like a promise. Like an anchor in a storm that hadn't quite ended. Megan leaned her head against his chest. Felt his heartbeat steady and strong beneath expensive fabric. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of light and shadow. Inside this room, 2 people who should have been enemies held each other and breathed. The war wasn't over. There would be trials, retribution, more violence to come. But for now, in this moment, they'd won, and that was enough. The council chamber was silent except for the sound of June breathing. 3 days had passed since his capture. 3 days of interrogation, revelation, and the systematic dismantling of everything he'd built. His network of informants, exposed. His offshore accounts, seized. His allies within the organization, identified and removed with surgical efficiency. Now he knelt in the center of the council chamber, wrists bound, blood crusted at his temple where Gyung's strike had landed. 13 council members sat in judgment, their faces carved from stone, their eyes cold with betrayal. Megan stood in the observation gallery above, watching. She'd earned her place there through blood and cunning, and the choice to save rather than kill. Gyung had insisted she witness this. The culmination of everything they'd fought for. The evidence is conclusive. Gyung's voice carried through the chamber, not from a wheelchair but from his feet. He'd walked into the meeting upright, shocking every council member who'd believed his paralysis absolute. June Park conspired with the Tak family to eliminate leadership and transfer organizational control. His communications are recorded. His financial crimes are documented. His assassination plot is proven. One of the elder council members, a woman who'd survived 3 syndicate wars, leaned forward. These are capital crimes. The punishment is death. Does anyone dispute this? Silence. Not even June spoke in his own defense. Then it settled. The elder's voice was flat. June Park, you are sentenced to. Wait. Gyung's hand lifted. Before sentence is passed, there's something the council should know. About the safe house attack 8 years ago. Megan's breath caught. This wasn't part of the plan. The attack that killed 17 civilians, Gyung continued, his voice steady. Including children. The attack that was supposed to be a precision strike on a Tak family weapons cache. The intelligence that mission was based on came from June. He falsified reports, confirmed targets that didn't exist, recommended incendiary charges on a residential building. Why? Another council member demanded. To destabilize my leadership. To make me look reckless, brutal, to sow doubt among our allies and fear among our people. Gyung's eyes found June. Those deaths were supposed to be my burden to carry, my sin to answer for. But they were yours. Every child, every innocent, yours. Prove it. June's voice was raw but defiant. You can't prove I falsified anything. I can. Megan spoke from the gallery, her voice carrying clear and strong. Every head turned to look at her. Because I have the original intelligence reports. The ones you submitted before falsifying them. The ones that clearly identified the target as a residential building with civilian occupants. She descended the stairs, holding a file folder she'd retrieved from the deepest archives of Gyung's intelligence network. Day had helped her find it, buried under layers of misdirection and false documentation. But it was there. Proof in June's own handwriting. This is Megan Miles, Gyung said as she entered the chamber proper. Survivor of that attack. Daughter of one of the families we were supposed to protect. She came here hunting revenge. She stayed because she learned the truth. Megan set the folder on the council table. Let them see the evidence. Original reports versus falsified versions. The differences stark and damning. He knew there were children inside, she said quietly. Confirmed it in his preliminary report. Then changed it in his final recommendation. Made them disappear on paper so they could be murdered in reality. The chamber erupted. Not with noise. The council didn't do anything as undignified as shouting, but with cold, contained fury. The kind of rage that ended with bodies in rivers and names erased from history. Is this true? The elder demanded, her voice cutting through the tension. June met her eyes and smiled. Every word. I falsified the intelligence, orchestrated the massacre, used those deaths to weaken Gyung's position with our international allies. It was brilliant strategy. It almost worked. Almost? Gyung's voice was deadly quiet. You survived, both politically and literally. June's eyes found Megan. And apparently you couldn't help yourself. Had to play hero. Had to save one of the children from the rubble. Compromised your own operation because you're weak. I'm not weak. Gyung took 3 steps toward June, each movement controlled despite the pain Megan knew it caused. I'm human. Something you stopped being years ago. Humanity is a liability in our world. No. Gyung stopped directly in front of June, looking down at the kneeling traitor. Humanity is what separates us from animals. What makes loyalty possible. What gives our actions meaning beyond mere survival. He turned to the council. June is guilty of every crime we've accused him of. But more than that, he's guilty of destroying the fundamental trust that holds this organization together. He made us monsters in the eyes of the world. Made me a monster in the eyes of innocents who deserved our protection. So kill me. June's voice was flat. Pull the trigger. Restore your honor through my blood. No. Gyung's hand moved to his hip, drawing the compact pistol he'd carried since the night in the hospital when he'd first learned to shoot from a wheelchair. But he didn't aim it at June. He held it loosely, aimed at the floor. I'm not going to kill you. The council will decide your fate. Properly. Legally. According to the codes we swore to uphold. You're giving him a trial? One of the younger council members sounded incredulous. After everything, I'm giving him justice. Kyung's voice was firm. Real justice. Not revenge dressed in righteousness. We're not animals. We don't execute people in chambers without due process. That's what separates us from the Tak family. From every other criminal organization that rules through fear alone. The elder council member studied Kyung with eyes that had seen generations of leaders rise and fall. You've changed, she said quietly. The man who ordered that safe house attack wouldn't have hesitated, wouldn't have cared about process. That man was being manipulated by a traitor. Kyung met her gaze. And he made choices he regrets. Choices he can't undo. But he can choose differently now. Choose better. His eyes found Megan. Held her gaze across the chamber. She saw everything in that look. Gratitude and guilt. And something that looked achingly like love. Miss Miles survived because I pulled her from the rubble. Kyung continued, still looking at her. Paid for her treatment. Gave her the chance to become who she is now. I didn't do it because I was ordered to. I did it because seeing what we'd done to that building, to those families, broke something in me. Made me realize that power without conscience is just tyranny. She changed you, the elder observed. No. Kyung finally looked away from Megan, turning back to the council. She reminded me who I wanted to be. There's a difference. And what do you want to be? Another council member asked. Better. The word was simple. Final. I want to be better than the man who gave that order 8 years ago. Better than the monster June tried to make me. Better than the broken thing sitting in a wheelchair pretending to be paralyzed while plotting revenge. He turned back to June. You're guilty. The evidence is conclusive. The council will vote. Justice will be served. But it will be justice. Not murder. Not revenge. Justice. June stared at him. You really have changed. She made you soft. No. Kyung's smile was sharp as broken glass. She made me human again. There's nothing soft about that. He turned to Megan. Extended his hand across the chamber. An invitation. A claim. A promise. She moved forward. Crossed the space between them. Took his hand. She's mine now, Kyung said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Not a question. Not a request. A declaration of absolute certainty. Megan Miles is under my protection. My partner. My equal. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Anyone who threatens her dies. Is that understood? The council members exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Claiming a woman publicly, granting her equal status, making her part of the power structure. Women existed in the syndicate as allies, as assets, as carefully managed pieces on a board. Not as equals. Never as equals. She's an outsider, one council member objected. She infiltrated our organization under false pretenses. How can we trust? She had every reason to kill me. Kyung's grip on Megan's hand tightened. Every justification. Every opportunity. She chose not to. Chose to stand beside me instead. That's worth more than a lifetime of empty oaths. She's the daughter of a family we destroyed, another said. Her loyalty is to truth, to justice, to doing what's right even when it costs her everything. Kyung pulled Megan closer, until they stood shoulder to shoulder. She's more loyal than half the people in this room. More trustworthy than the man kneeling before you, and she's mine. My choice, my protection, my future. The weight of those words settled over the chamber like snow. Megan felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the council. If anyone disputes my claim, Kyung continued, speak now. Silence. Long and heavy and absolute. Then it settled. The elder council member nodded slowly. Megan Miles is claimed. Protected. Recognized. She paused. And June Park's sentence? Death, every voice said in unison. Including Megan's. Including Kyung's. 3 days, the elder pronounced. Standard protocol. Final meal. Last words. Then execution. June laughed. It was a horrible sound, broken and triumphant. You think you've won, but you're just extending the game. The Tak family won't forget, won't forgive. They'll come for both of you. And when they do, you'll wish you'd killed me quickly. Let them come. Young's voice was stone. "We'll be ready." Guards moved forward, hauling June to his feet, dragging him toward the doors that led to the cells below. He went without fighting, his laughter echoing in the chamber until the doors closed and cut it off. The council began to file out. Business concluded. Justice served. Megan and Gyung remained in the center of the chamber, hands still clasped, breathing the same air. "She's mine now," Megan repeated softly. "That's how you claimed me? Like I'm a possession?" "No." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Like you're mine to protect. Mine to stand beside. Mine to build a future with. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "A possession can be sold, traded, discarded. You can't be. You're part of me now. Bone of my bone, sin of my sin. We're both damned, completely." His smile was small and genuine. "But we're damned together, and that makes all the difference." Megan leaned into his touch. "What happens now? Now we survive, together, whatever comes next. The Tack family. We'll come, and we'll be ready. You and me, partners. Equals? Equals." He said it like a vow. "In every way that matters." She should argue. Should point out all the ways this was impossible. Should remind him that claiming her publicly painted a target on both their backs. But she didn't. Instead, she stood on her toes and kissed him. Fierce and claiming and absolutely certain. His arms came around her, holding tight, and for one perfect moment the world reduced to just this. Two broken people choosing each other despite every reason not to. When they finally pulled apart, Megan rested her forehead against his. "I'm yours," she whispered. "But you're mine too. Fair trade." "Fair trade," he agreed, and smiled like a man who'd just won everything that mattered. The reunion happened in a safe house on the outskirts of the city, in a neighborhood where money spoke softer than violence, and everyone knew better than to see things they shouldn't. Megan stood outside the door, Gyung beside her in his wheelchair, a strategic choice for this meeting, and felt her heart trying to escape her chest. 8 years. 8 years of believing her mother was either dead or irretrievably lost. 8 years of hunting ghosts through shadows. The door opened. Her mother stood in the threshold, older, thinner, marked by survival in ways that made Megan's own scars seem insignificant. Natural coils gone silver at the temples, brown skin weathered by years of hiding, eyes that still held light despite everything. "Baby girl," her mother whispered. Megan broke. All the control, all the careful walls she'd built, shattered like glass. She was across the threshold and in her mother's arms before conscious thought registered, sobbing into her shoulder like the 18-year-old who'd been pulled from burning rubble. "I looked for you," Megan gasped between sobs. "I looked everywhere. 8 years, Mama, 8 years, I thought." I know, baby, I'm sorry." Her mother's hands stroked her hair, familiar and achingly missed. "I'm so sorry." They stood like that for long minutes, crying together, mourning the years stolen from them. When Megan finally pulled back enough to breathe, she saw Gyung still in the doorway, giving them space but present. Watching with an expression she couldn't quite read. Her mother followed her gaze, stiffened slightly. Then, to Megan's shock, bowed her head in a gesture of profound respect. "Mr. Kwan," her mother said quietly. "Thank you for keeping your promise." "Mrs. Miles." Gyung wheeled forward into the modest living room. "I only regret it took 8 years to fulfill it." Megan looked between them, understanding dawning cold and clear. "You knew. Both of you. This whole time you knew each other. Sit down, baby." Her mother guided her to a worn couch. "There are things I need to tell you. Things I should have told you years ago." Megan sat. Gyung positioned his wheelchair nearby, close enough to reach if she needed him, far enough to give mother and daughter space. The gesture spoke of care that made her chest ache. "The night of the fire," her mother began, her voice steady despite the pain threading through it. "We weren't just civilians caught in crossfire. Your father, my husband, he worked for the Tack family. Intelligence division. I didn't know until after we married, after you and Adriana were born. By then I was trapped. The world tilted. Daddy worked for. He didn't have a choice. They owned his family's debt, threatened to kill his parents if he didn't cooperate. Her mother's hands twisted in her lap. I wanted to leave, take you girls and disappear. But they were watching. Always watching. The safe house, Gyung said quietly, was a Tak family asset. Intelligence station disguised as residential housing. Your father worked there, coordinating attacks against my organization. But the children, Megan whispered. Adriana, the others, shouldn't have been there. Her mother's voice cracked. Your father promised me they'd evacuate families before operations. Promised the building would be clear. He lied, or his superiors lied to him. Either way, when Mr. Kwan's men attacked, they attacked what they believed was a legitimate military target. June gave me intelligence confirming it was purely operational, Gyung added. No civilians, no families. Standard protocol required evacuation warnings, but June bypassed that too. Made it look like the Tak family had already cleared the building. Megan's hands shook. 8 years of rage, of grief, of burning need for revenge. All of it built on incomplete truths. Adriana died because Daddy's employers used her as a shield. Yes. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. And your father died trying to save her. The Tak family executed him 3 days later for failing to protect their intelligence assets. They blamed him for the attack. Said he'd compromised security. And you? Megan's voice was hollow. How did you survive? Mr. Kwan pulled me from the rubble after he pulled you. Got both of us to the clinic. Then he came to me with an offer. Her mother looked at Gyung. Protection in exchange for information. Everything I knew about Tak family operations, their structure, their plans. You became his informant. I became his ally. Her mother's voice was firm. He didn't threaten me. Didn't force me. He offered me safety and the chance to hurt the people who'd gotten my daughter killed. I took it. Gyung's expression remained neutral. Your mother's intelligence helped dismantle 3 Tak family operations, saved countless lives, including mine. She warned me about an assassination attempt that would have succeeded without her. So you hid her. Megan looked at her mother, seeing her with new eyes. Not a victim, a survivor. A player in the same deadly game Megan had been playing for 3 months. For 8 years you've been working with him. For 8 years I've been trying to stay alive long enough to see you again. Her mother reached for Megan's hand. Mr. Kwan promised me that if you ever came looking, he'd keep you safe, protect you the way I couldn't. Is that why you let me infiltrate? Megan turned to Gyung. Because you promised her? Partially. His honesty was brutal as always. But also because I recognized your skills. Saw how you moved, how you thought. You inherited your mother's intelligence and your father's tactical mind. Wasting that seemed criminal. So you used me. Both of you. We protected you. Her mother corrected gently. Every step you took, Mr. Kwan was watching, guiding, making sure you didn't stumble into traps that would have killed you. The moment you stepped into that cafe, you were safer than you'd been in 8 years. Megan wanted to be angry. Wanted to rage at the manipulation, at the years of grief that could have been avoided if someone had just told her the truth. But looking at her mother's face, marked by years of hiding, of fear, of surviving in shadows, she couldn't. Her mother had done what she needed to do to stay alive for her. You sent me to find him, Megan said slowly. That's why you left the research materials, the dark web access, the carefully planted clues. You wanted me to infiltrate his organization. I wanted you to find the truth. Her mother squeezed her hand. And I knew Mr. Kwan would keep his promise, would give you everything I couldn't. Safety, answers, purpose. And if I'd tried to kill him, you wouldn't have succeeded. Gyung's voice was matter-of-fact. I've survived better assassins than you. No offense. None taken. Megan laughed, brittle and broken. So what now? I found you. Found the truth. Helped destroy June. Where does that leave us? Her mother's eyes moved between Megan and Gyung, saw something in the way they sat, close enough to touch, gravitating toward each other despite the space. Understanding dawned in her expression. Oh, baby, she said softly. You fell for him. Megan started to deny it. Couldn't. Yes. And him? Her mother looked at Gyung. What are your intentions toward my daughter? The question was so absurdly normal. A mother interrogating her daughter's lover, that Megan almost laughed. Almost. Gyong met her mother's eyes with absolute seriousness. I claimed her before the council, publicly, irrevocably. She's under my protection. My partner. My equal, in every way that matters. That's not what I asked. I know. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I love her. I've loved her since the night she chose to save me instead of taking the easy revenge, and I intend to marry her, with your blessing. Without it if necessary, but I'd prefer with it. Megan's breath caught. They'd talked about staying together, about surviving together. But marriage, that was permanent, binding, real in ways that terrified her. Gyong, she started. No. He turned his wheelchair to face her fully. Let me say this. I've spent 2 years planning June's downfall. 8 years carrying guilt for ordering that attack. 15 years building an empire from blood and violence. And none of it matters compared to you. He reached for her hand. She gave it without hesitation. You make me better, he continued. Not soft, not weak, but better, more human. You remind me why I started this. To build something worth protecting. To create order from chaos. To be more than just another criminal wearing expensive suits. I'm not your redemption, Megan said, but her voice was soft. I can't erase what you've done. I don't want you to. His thumb traced the scar on her wrist. I want you beside me while I do better. While I build something worth the lives it's cost. While I try to be the man you see when you look at me. And what do I see? Someone worth saving. His voice was raw. Someone worth standing beside despite all the logical reasons not to. Someone who pulled a girl from rubble when he should have finished the execution. Someone who's still trying to be human in a world that punishes humanity. Tears tracked down Megan's face. You're making this very difficult. Good. He smiled. Marry me. Not because you have to. Not because I'm claiming you, but because you choose to. Because together we're better than we are apart. That's not a proposal. That's a logical argument. Then let me try again. He shifted, and to her shock, he stood. Slowly, painfully. But he stood, looking down at her for the first time since they'd met. Megan Miles. You're the strongest, most intelligent, most infuriating woman I've ever met. You infiltrated my organization, stole my secrets, helped destroy my enemy, and made me fall in love with you in the process. Marry me. Stand beside me. Build something worth all the blood it took to get here. Her mother squeezed her hand. Say yes, baby. Life's too short to say no to love when you find it. Megan looked at Gyong. Really looked. Saw the man who'd ordered her sister's death, and the man who'd pulled her from rubble. The monster who'd built an empire on violence, and the human who'd chosen mercy when he could have chosen revenge. The broken thing in a wheelchair and the whole man standing before her now. She saw all of it, accepted all of it. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He pulled her up, into his arms, and kissed her like a man who'd just been granted salvation. She kissed him back like a woman who'd found home in the last place she expected. When they finally broke apart, Gyong was smiling. Genuine and unguarded and achingly young despite the silver in his hair. I need to sit down, he admitted, and she laughed through her tears, helping him back into the wheelchair. Dramatic proposal aside, her mother said, and there was warmth in her voice now. You understand what this means? Marrying into his world? I'm already in his world, Mama. Have been since I sat down in that cafe. Megan knelt beside her mother. And I'm tired of running. Tired of being alone. He makes me feel safe, protected, like I can finally stop looking over my shoulder. Then I give you my blessing. Her mother cupped Megan's face. But the moment he hurts you, I'm calling in favors with every intelligence contact I have left. Is that understood, Mr. Kwan? Perfectly. Gyung's voice was solemn. Though I should warn you, I have better intelligence contacts. It would be a very short war. Her mother laughed. Actually laughed. I like him. He's honest about what he is. That's what I keep telling her, Gyung said. They spent another hour in that safe house. Making plans. Catching up on 8 years of life lived separately. Her mother told stories of Adriana that Megan had forgotten. Small moments of grace that hurt and healed simultaneously. Gyung listened quietly, absorbing the weight of what his order had destroyed, carrying it with visible gravity. When it was finally time to leave, her mother walked them to the door. "You'll be safe here?" Megan asked. "Mr. Kwon's security is excellent, and I've survived this long. I'm not about to get sloppy now." She pulled Megan into another fierce hug. "Come visit. Often. I've missed 8 years. I'm not missing any more. I promise. And you?" Her mother looked at Gyung. "Take care of my daughter. She's all I have left." "I will." He said it like a vow. "With my life." Outside, the city was waking to another day. Traffic building. People moving through their lives unaware that in a modest safe house, a family had been reunited. That in the shadows of the criminal world, something like hope was taking root. Gyung's driver waited by the car, helped Megan load the wheelchair. They drove in comfortable silence through streets that felt different now, less threatening, more familiar. Home, maybe. Or the beginning of one. "Your mother is formidable," Gyung said finally. "She survived the Tak family, your attack, and 8 years in hiding. Formidable doesn't begin to cover it." Megan laced her fingers through his. "Thank you for keeping her safe, for bringing me to her. Thank you for not shooting me when you had the chance." His smile was wry. "It would have been inconvenient." "Inconvenient. That's what you're calling our entire relationship?" "Among other things." He pulled her closer until she was pressed against his side despite the confines of the car. "Complicated, dangerous, completely inadvisable by any rational standard. But perfect, despite all that. Or maybe because of it." His lips brushed her temple. "We're both broken pieces that somehow fit together. Redemption built from sin. Salvation born from forbidden choices." Megan closed her eyes, breathing him in. Expensive cologne and gun oil, and something uniquely him that she'd come to crave. "Where do we go from here?" "Forward." His voice was certain. "Together, we clean up the last of June's network, stabilize the organization, build something better than what came before. And then we get married, start a life that's more than just survival, maybe even find happiness if we're lucky." "You think we deserve happiness? After everything?" "No." His honesty was brutal as always. "But I think we've earned the right to try, and that's enough." The car pulled up to the penthouse tower. Guards nodded as they passed. The elevator rose through 50 stories of carefully maintained power, and when they finally entered the space that had become theirs, marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows and the ghost of every conversation they'd had, Megan felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Hard-won and blood-bought and absolutely earned. "I love you," she said. Not a confession, a statement of fact, simple and certain. "I know." Gyung's smile was soft. "You've loved me since the night you helped me take those first 15 steps, maybe even before. Arrogant. Accurate." He pulled her down into his lap, unmindful of the wheelchair, holding her like she was precious, breakable, his. "And I love you. Have since you chose to stand beside me instead of shooting me in the back. We're both terrible at this romance thing. Probably." His fingers traced her spine, gentle and possessive. "But we're learning. Together. Together." The word that had become their promise, their future, their salvation. Megan kissed him slowly, thoroughly, pouring 8 years of grief and rage and desperate hope into the contact. He kissed her back like a man who'd been given a second chance he never expected to receive. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of light and shadow. Inside the penthouse, 2 people who should have been enemies held each other and breathed, planned futures, chose each other despite every logical reason not to. They were both damaged, both dangerous, both carrying sins that would never be fully erased. But they were together, and in the brutal world they inhabited, that was more than miracle. It was salvation. Forbidden and fragile, and absolutely real. And for now, in this moment, it was enough.